It's Twin the Aisle with me, Charles Gross, and Leslie Hoban Blake. Tonight, reviews of What the Constitution Means to Me, White Noise, Ain't No More, Burn This, Cradle of Rock, and Mrs. Murray's Menagerie. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Two on the Aisle. Hello again.
Hello, Charlie.
We have a lot to talk about tonight.
We do.
So let's talk now. I actually saw What the Constitution Means to Me off Broadway.
You did. And I didn't.
It has been moved on Broadway.
And it was kind of like, is this play going to work? And it's a 90-minute play, and it works like crazy. It's amazing. And you told me how much you enjoyed it, and you told me how much I would enjoy it, and you were absolutely right. It's written by Heidi Schreck. It's basically a one-person show with two other people, and the two other people are Roselli Cyprian, which is whom we saw. There are two girls who play, and then Mike Iverson was the guy that we saw. And what happens is Heidi Schreck paid for her college education by talking in contests all across the country in veterans of foreign wars and
Legion,
and American Legion halls and all of those places, the Elks Club, that would sponsor these patriotic, civics-oriented, constitutional.
And apparently she won quite a few.
She evidently won most of them, and they were debates. Mm-hmm. They were not just simply getting up and speaking. They were debates, and evidently it was a lot of money. Or college was very cheap wherever she went. I don't know which, but in any case,
This was a few years ago. And what she does is she tries to recreate the presentation she gave. Then she talks about the Constitution, what she considers its flaws. And she ties it to her family history, which was very hard, especially for the female members of it, and where the Constitution helped them, but mostly where the Constitution let them down.
Well, the idea was also the fact that women were not mentioned in the Constitution. So when she would say something about it, all men are, of course, that doesn't include women. It would be a side thing. And that was how she brought up the fact that the women in her family did not do as well by this. But the idea is it kind of lifted your spirits. So that before you kind of thought, wow, yeah, the Constitution, yeah, right. And then you kind of go, oh, wait a minute, we're not living in great constitutional times right now necessarily. So, well, that's my feeling anyway. And
well, I would say Heidi Schreck would agree with you, which is why she is actually in favor of scrapping the Constitution and drawing up a new one. I don't particularly agree with that idea, and interestingly, neither does Roselli Cyprian, who is basically doing what Heidi did years ago.
Except she's 14 and black.
Right.
And adorable,
yes.
And so smart. You just...
Well, here's the thing. She is actually not in favor of scrapping the Constitution.
It was arbitrary.
But no, the night that we saw it on Broadway...
Yes.
She argued for scrapping it.
But it was an arbitrary choice.
Right.
We don't know whether she believes in it or not.
No, we do, because I've heard her give her feelings. The night that I saw it off Broadway, Roselli argued for keeping the Constitution.
I see.
And I have to say, Heidi is very lucky she didn't have to face this young lady when she was doing her tours, because I've seen it, every time I've seen it, she's won, and she's won on both sides.
You don't think it's because Heidi's an adult and she's a child? You don't think that is a precocious child?
I really do think.
Okay,
now, again,
I kind of thought
Heidi
it was
is Heidi is having fun. In
Yes.
fact, I think she's having a lot. I think her performance was a lot looser. A lot more go with the flow than it was.
It was originally at New York Theatre Workshop,
Yes.
which is brought us several plays up to Broadway, which is quite
downtown.
something.
I mean, she was, let's say, high on life.
The set was very
film.
interesting. The set had all the pictures of the presidents, and she referred back to it and made a comment that let you know she was not particularly fond of Trump, and the way that she pointed to that.
That doesn't surprise me. I don't think there is any actor on Broadway who likes Trump.
Well, no, there are Republican actors. I'm not sure they're on Broadway.
They're in the closet right now.
Perchance. But she also gave out, when you leave, you get your very own copy of the Constitution. It's a minimal. It's a mini version. It's all there. It's just made into a very small little handful. But I have to say, the thing is that I had such a good time while I was in the theater, and I thought, this is what we need more of, and civics isn't taught properly, and this would be so exciting. And then I hit the cold air, because it was still chilly, the cold air outside, and went, oh, damn, it's really 19, and this is all very wishful thinking that we could do any of this. This was even before the Mueller report came in. So I tell you, if you want to get your mind off how bad things are, go to see this, because it really gives you hope.
It will tell you how bad things were.
And it gives you hope,
and
even if it's momentary,
the fact
even if
is,
it's
regardless
fleeting.
of how you feel about what is happening in the country today, and there's a lot to be upset about regardless of what side of the fence you're on, things have been a lot worse.
Wanted to mention two things really quickly. Rachel Hauk did the set, which was really terrific. And Oliver Butler was the director. And we saw something else that Oliver Butler just directed. I cannot remember what it is. If I have a second and I can get over to see, I'll try to find his name. But I know we saw his name on something else.
How many playbills would you give this?
Oh, I would give this 4.75, if not 5.
Okay. I would give this like 3.75.
Well,
I
it's
think.
because it's the second time you saw it, or is that what you would have given it the first time?
I think this is just I did enjoy it. I do recommend it, but I think 3.75.
Okay. Well, anyway,
is as high as I'm willing to go on this.
I really liked it, and I really enjoyed it. And while we're still okay.
Yes, we're moving on. This is White Noise.
Still downtown.
Speaking of Constitution, yes, this is Lynn Nottage, who's given us who's kept us very busy.
No, this is Suzanne Laurie Parks.
Oh, that's right, Suzanne Laurie Parks.
I did the same thing.
Okay.
I did the same thing. Don't.
All right. Sorry about that, Suzanne. Who also has given us a lot to talk about the last couple of years. This, interestingly, does use a point of the Constitution as a major plot device. This is for, I guess, 20 or early 30-something friends. They're couples, but they go back to college. There are two interracial couples. There's Leo. He's a poet, a black poet who never has been able to sleep at night. There's Mishpa.
Played by Daveed Diggs, who was Jefferson on Broadway.
Yes.
Jefferson and Hamilton on Broadway
in Hamilton,
and off Broadway.
on and off Broadway. There's Mishpa. She is Misha, excuse me. A black woman who is living with Ralph. We'll get to him in a minute. And she, interestingly, she's this well-spoken, well-brought-up young woman who does the show Ask a Black. And
or she says, "Ask the Black."
Well, that's the thing. She ebonies it up.
I may get into trouble for doing it.
When she goes on the air.
Okay.
And then there's Dawn. She's a crusading lawyer who is living with Leo.
Played by Zoe Winters.
Right.
Oh, Sharia Irving plays Mishka.
Right. And they get together, they go bowling, and after...
Whoa, we left out Tom Sadowski.
I'm sorry. Yes, a college professor who is independently wealthy. He is apparently an excellent teacher, but doesn't get published, and as a result, he's been passed up for a nice promotion.
Right. He didn't get tenure.
Right.
Yeah.
And the play takes a turn, a very interesting turn, when Leo, after a police incident, goes to Ralph and says, "I want to be your slave." So,
well, he says, "I want you to own me." They don't. He doesn't ever say the word slave. The word slave is said by somebody else.
All right.
He says, "I want you to own me," and they go, "What are you talking about? What a terrible thing!"
Yes.
And he explains that it would take the pressure off him.
Right. He figured, all my needs are taken care of. I have someone.
And it would be protection.
Yes, he would have protection. Now, how much protection who you work for actually gives you? He cited that when, blacks were slaves, if they were on the street, they'd say, "I'm such and such a slave," they'd be left alone.
But
I don't know whether that would work today.
These days, these guys get shot, from far away, and nobody ever speaks. So.
And whether this is actually legal, speaking of the Constitution.
Yes, well. It was for 40 days, which was a very propitious number of days.
You could do an indentured servitude, I suppose.
Well, basically, that's
servitude.
what it,
But the bottom line is, it's how it changes Leo, and more surprising, how it changes his wife, who's a pretty calm, outgoing person. And what I enjoyed about this play is you don't see anything coming. Believe it or not, this is not the first play I've seen where a modern black person wants to be a slave.
Really?
Really.
What other play?
Years ago, by the author of Geniuses. There was a play, and in one scene, and
okay, I don't know.
That's for another discussion.
Okay.
And it was actually very good, very interesting.
Okay.
This play covers some of the same ground, but the question is not so much. They both seem to go into it easily. I mean, Ralph initially doesn't want to be a slave owner,
right?
But he takes to the role.
Well, and other things happen. He's handed a blank white card which enables him to get into the White Club.
Yes.
And what do you say about the White Club? You don't say anything
Right.
about the White Club, which is a takeoff on Fight Club, of course.
Right. It's a club for white privilege. But again, that's one of the curves. A lot of plays you could at least reasonably see things. I didn't know how this play was going to end. And that's the one flaw in it. So she has an ending, but it's like, okay, I know after 3 hours I have to end this.
Well, let's not get
I won't say how it ends.
But there were a couple of
but-
things I did want to speak about.
Okay.
The set by Clint Ramos, who did Slave Play, is almost non-existent. I always thought to myself, what set? And then I realized there's a complete metal framework to the set, which is used for all kinds of things. But it looks like it just belongs there. It doesn't look like it's part of anything else.
Right.
So that's really very exciting. And there's a bowling alley. It
Yes.
takes place in an actual bowling alley.
Well,
where
part
they
of
actually,
it. And it's not really. I mean, there's some gutters where where he's got some bowling balls rolling. There are no pins or anything like that.
You don't see that, but you actually see
Yes.
people bowl.
They actually bowl on stage.
On stage,
Wow.
right. Well, but that means you have to build a floor a certain way, and the ball has to be,
Yeah, yeah.
I was quite taken by that.
Okay.
And did you mention that Daveed Diggs' character Leo had been brutalized by the police
Yes.
by mistake?
And
okay, 'cause I
that is
didn't hear
why
you say that.
that is why
okay,
he wants
no, I know that.
the
I just-
protection,
yep.
quote
Right.
unquote,
Quote, unquote.
of.
And there are all sorts of
yes,
little in-between things amongst the four
well,
because
there are
they've
some
known each
there
other.
are some
We
soap
don't-
opera-ish incidents that I think the play could have lived without.
Well, maybe not.
yeah.
But it is what it does to the characters, and also the very title itself has so many layers. The white noise that this refers to
Right.
initially is the machine that he uses to try to sleep with, but white noise is white people talking, and do they say
Right.
anything, and all of that kind of stuff. It was a fascinating play. We didn't see it together,
No.
so
But
we didn't get to talk about it.
actually, we did. That one. Oh no, it didn't.
No, we
You're
didn't.
right,
You
you're
saw
right,
it
you're
at a
right.
different time
Right,
than I
you're
did.
right,
So
we didn't.
it was one of those
Yes.
where I almost was going to call you, and I thought we
Right,
try
well,
not to talk about these.
I called her and I said I really want to discuss this
Yeah,
with you. So
yeah.
I'm sorry, I've been talking a lot. So what are your?
No, that's okay. No, I think we covered everything. I just wanted to make sure that we said that Oscar Eustace, the head of the Public Theater,
Right, directed
This
this.
is the play that Oscar chose to direct this
Right?
season.
And he made a good choice.
And he made a good choice.
And he did a good job with it.
And Suzanne and he have been together since he first came to the public. So, he put up her 365 plays in 365 days, which was quite astonishing.
Right.
So, yes, he made a good choice.
Yep.
She wrote a good play. I would give it, I'm in a 4 point something. I'll give it 4.7.
I will give it 4 certainly.
Okay.
And
The acting is really superb.
excellent acting. Really, again, a play. You're not going to know where it's going.
No, total
And
ensemble.
And it's been a long time since I could say that about a play.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
So we're going to stay down at the public now for a few
Okay.
minutes. You want to
This is
hold?
Ain't No Mo.
Why don't you hold that up
All
and
right.
I'll use this. Okay, so I didn't mean that way. Ain't No Mo is Ain't No Mo what? And the answer to that question of Ain't No Mo what is Ain't No Mo. Go ahead, go ahead, say it.
No more blacks.
Well, that's only
Well,
part of it.
yes.
It's when Obama gets elected. All right, let me go back. This play.
No, it is after Obama is no longer in
It's
office.
2008 that the Ain't No Mo part comes up. It's in the church ceremony. And it's in the church
okay,
service.
okay, fine. That's when it starts.
That's when it starts. Yes. So let me lay this on you. So here's what happens. This play starts with a church service, and in the church service, Jordan Cooper, who plays a very important role in the show. Jordan Cooper is the writer. Has
Which in itself is a very important role.
Yes, has people on both sides of the public stage, out in the audience, and then on the stage is a casket, which is brought in from the audience and put on the stage. And it's Ain't No More all the stuff that black people complained about because they were being put upon by white people because now there was a black president, 2008. So it was Ain't No More this and Ain't No More that, and it's all done. And the church, and there's a word that you are encouraged to use that we were all brought up to not use,
Right.
which
begins with an N.
and it's interesting because at one point it's discussed afterwards. At least I stayed for a discussion about
Right.
who will say that word and who won't in the audience.
Well, the interesting thing is, I think, you know, he's kind of to a black play what Mel Brooks is to Jewish films, sort of.
Well,
Sort of, because he can do this where no one else could.
Well, okay, but George C. Wolfe did it first in the Colored Museum, which is the same kind of thing. George C. Wolfe
But
wrote.
it's more taboo today. Even going back, when was Colored Museum?
Oh, I got back in the 80s?
Okay, yeah.
70s even,
Yeah.
maybe?
I mean, they just stopped. They're not going to play "God Bless America" by Kate
Kate Smith, yeah.
Smith at Yankee Stadium
yeah.
because of a song she did that, ironically, that is considered
We
racist.
don't know that it was ironic. We just know that it was there.
Even though Paul Robeson.
It says somebody has to pick the cotton. That was a line in the song.
Right. But again, Paul
Well,
Robeson
if Paul
did the
Robeson
same.
sang it, then it would have been ironic. If Kate Smith sang it, then it
Well,
might not have
But
been.
the bottom line is,
Could we
people
go back
are
to
much
this,
more
though?
sensitive about this today. Well, that's part of this.
Well, let's go this way. Colored Museum came smashing on stage. It brought George C. Wolfe right to the front. Before he was a director, he was a playwright. And what he did was he had vignettes from Black Life. And one of the things he had, which I thought was amazing, was there was a play called The Last Black Mammy on the Couch Play. That's the title of this little vignette. And it's a large woman in the Ethel Waters frame, you know, who sits talking like the mammy, like the mother
Right.
in Raisin in the Sun.
Right.
You know, my son, this, that, and she's the last one ever to play. There will be no more
We
of those
need to.
plays. Anyway, so this play has several different episodes.
The story evolves into that every black in the country is leaving America
On
and
the
going to
African American Airlines, or
Right.
AAA.
And so there are vignettes, some better than others. The glue is the stewardess who's getting everyone on the plane.
And that's Peaches, and she is played by Jordan E. Cooper,
Right, the
and she
playwright.
is a drag queen.
Yes.
And she is phenomenal. She's in a
Yes.
little pink leatherette
Right.
outfit, a snakeskin outfit.
And we see people from different walks of life, and the issue is coming up: are they going? Are they not going? Etc. And you know, one on a, you know, doing it on a talk show. One woman who is white but considers herself black.
Well, that's
and interesting.
Fedna. No, that's Simone Rakasner, or Rakasne. I'm not sure how you say it. Who calls herself Rashonda and
Right.
considers herself to be transracial.
Yes.
And she's said that you can't be against her because it's not right to be against her because she's
Well,
just
for
as
the
black.
same, I guess, for the same reason, it's, you know, transgender.
No,
But
hardly. That's not
again,
quite
for
the
another
same thing.
discussion, because we're running a little,
Okay.
we're a little low on time. So
Brilliantly done.
Yes.
Very, very funny.
I normally do not like this type of play of this structure because
Mm-hmm.
generally I feel it just lets me down. This I really enjoyed.
Oh, this built
you
and
know,
built and built. And then
especially
it-
with Cooper's Peaches.
Yeah.
She was the glue that held this all together, and I loved every minute of her. And I enjoyed the other.
Marshawn
vignettes
Davis was
as
the
well.
was the pastor. I tried to get a few of these, and there was a girl named Fedna Jacquet who was deciding whether to have an abortion or not. And there are two other characters: Ebony Marshall Oliver and Crystal Lucas Perry. That names everybody. I'm not sure, but everybody played so many parts except for Jordan Cooper.
Right.
So anyway, it was brilliantly done. And what would you give it?
3 3/4.
3 3/4? No, I would give it 4.5.
Well, for me, that's for this type of play. That's really
Oh, I
that's
see.
a
Okay,
rave.
for this type of play. Okay. And you are moving on to.
Burn this.
Indeed. Don't
This
cover
is
up those handsome, beautiful people.
Oh, yes. The first revival of the Lanford Wilson play since its Broadway, well, the first Broadway revival.
First Broadway, 2002.
Right, there was an off-Broadway revival. But
Norton,
now it's back. And
somebody named Norton,
This
the actor.
play originally was with John Malkovich and Joan Allen. Now their roles are being played
And
by
Lou Liberatore and John Hogan. It's a 4-character play.
right? Adam Driver and Carrie Russell. You may have heard from Adam Driver about this. He's in this series that takes place in a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And Ms. Russell will be appearing with him in the next installment of
Adam
that.
Driver starred in Girls. He was on for 5 or 6 seasons of Girls. If you probably never watched it. But.
I watched 2 episodes, and that was
Okay.
enough. And also the other two characters, David Furr as Kerry Russell's boyfriend, hunky boyfriend, and Brandon Uranowitz as the gay roommate.
Yes.
And they are basically this takes place in 1987. Their third roommate, a dancer who Kerry was professionally involved with, but not personally, has just died. And it's traumatic because, you know, they were very close, plus the family either does not know or does not admit to knowing of his dancing career, plus the fact that he was gay. And again, to be gay was a little different in 1987.
And she's just come home from his funeral, and she can't contain herself because they never talked about anything real. They talked about, they didn't talk about his dancing, and they didn't talk about his being gay. They just talked about baseball.
All of a sudden, Adam Driver, who is the brother of her friend, the late dancer's brother, who she had never met until here, comes bursting in, rambling on, and he's got this huge monologue.
And they fortunately didn't try to update this. They said it in the 80s.
Yes.
And they're wearing all the 80s clothing.
And that was the smart thing to do. And he's got all this hair, just like Malkovich did.
Well, not quite as much. Malkovich had a wig, and it went down to here, and he played with it.
Yes.
But I have to say that it was brilliant.
And they end
to
up
keep
in each other's arms.
Well, not that quickly, and other things do happen. But they're in each other's arms and out of each other's arms, and in each other's arms and out of each other's arms.
Well, he kind of just keeps coming in and out of her life over the next week or so.
Well, and then but the difference here is that I believe that these were two people that this might have happened to. I never believed it was Malkovich at all.
Oh.
Malkovich was a film actor slumming in theater, it seemed.
No, Malkovich was doing a lot of theater back then.
I don't know about a lot of theater.
And he had a much, again, there are a lot of things I don't remember about that production.
Well, I do.
But I do remember his performance, and I do remember Joan Allen, who was has such an amazing talent to react, and how she sat, which is why I didn't feel that this quite measured up. You know, when we were doing first impressions, the character's name is that Driver plays, and Malkovich played his name Pale, and I said Driver's performance pales in comparison. That may have been a little too harsh.
No,
but I noticed that
didn't.
while he was doing his monologues, while I was losing interest, and the second act with Brandon Uranowitz as the roommate, yes, who's kind of there for comic relief, doing his thing, which I had totally forgotten from the original production. That was the part of the play that made the strongest impression.
He won a Tony for that. Lou Liberatore won a Tony for that part.
That made the strongest impression
for me. It was
me.
also, don't forget, Lanford was gay, Marshall Mason, the director, was gay, and it was written at a time when they were still talking about the AIDS crisis.
Yes.
So this was a kind of a left field AIDS play, even though it wasn't specific. The guys didn't die of AIDS, but people were dying of AIDS at the time. I have to say that Kerry Russell disappointed me. She was gorgeous to look at. She was tiny. She was sylph-like. She seemed to be a dancer, but she didn't seem to be much of an actress to me. And I loved her. I mean, I saw her in The Americans. I think she held her own. But you know what? Adam Driver is so friggin' big. He's 6'5", and she's about 2 inches tall, and so she was dwarfed by him in every way. And I don't know whether anybody could have worked against him. I honestly don't. And he was a force of nature. He comes in and he's drunk and he's coked up and he's throwing things around. And I believed it. You know that sense of danger that I didn't find in True West? I saw it in Burn This.
I didn't,
I felt, well, okay, I felt danger. We did see the same.
Especially after he meets her other boyfriend, who just happens to be a black belt in Kung Fu or something along those lines.
Or so he says.
Or so he demonstrates.
No, he demonstrates. He actually, yes. It must be amazing to actually get to throw a man that size.
Well, they're both about the same size, and they both get to throw each other. So there is some action.
Driver is pumped, and the other guy is just tall.
All right, but he's
plus those '80s clothes made him look like Gargantua. Yes. He looked like our gorilla friend from King Kong.
Big.
He looks big all over, and the clothes didn't help. It's a good thing he didn't come around in those days.
I was really looking forward to this. I was really
and I wasn't. I had a much better time than I expected.
And I had a much less good time than I maybe.
But I saw the 2002 with Norton. What is Norton's first name? The movie actor.
Oh, Ed.
Ed Norton. Thank you, Ed Norton, who wasn't anywhere near the size of the part.
All right, we need to move on. So your conclusion.
So, 4.
3.5.
I'm in a big 4 mood tonight. That
Okay.
one is yours.
All right. This one is mine. Now, I'm going to talk very quickly about
No,
this.
that was yours. Mine
This
is
is-
Cradle Will Rock.
All right.
And
Let's-
then
we have
that's
to talk
yours.
very quickly. We only have 2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes. The whole Cradle Will Rock. Cradle Will Rock was from 1937. It was an agitprop play by Mark Blitzstein, who also then went on to do Threepenny Opera, which was very successful. This was not only not successful, it was with the theater, the Federal...
Orson Welles.
Orson Welles and the Federal
Right.
Project Theater, and they weren't able to do it in the theater. They closed the theater.
But this production...
This production doesn't, it's agitprop, and it's sung through, and it's very, it sounds
it's
like...
basically, it's corporation bad, union good. And they're kind of banging that into your head all
They're
night.
archetypes, and well, the point is that it was something new when it was done. It's been done
Right.
1,000 times since, and better. It's very Brechtian, although Brecht, nobody knew who Brecht was at the time. And so Tony Yazbek, who I have never not liked, I was kind of lost in this. Everybody was kind of lost in it. It's Mr. is running the place. That's David Garrison, and Tony is trying
Very,
to...
very underutilized.
Yeah, everybody was underutilized. And it's a cast of 30 played by 10. It's what John Doyle, this is the end of the season, it's what John Doyle does with his actors. And
You know what? I've heard the score before. I've never actually seen it on
Yeah.
stage. I liked it better than I thought I would, but I think your analysis is about right. So let's say 2.5, maybe 3 playbills.
well, the 3 is very generous.
You're right.
I would just like to name one or two. The actor Sally Ann Triplett as Mrs. Mister
She was excellent.
She was very, very good.
Big standout.
And a couple of others who were supposed to be standouts were not, and I don't think today's audience even knew what the things were referring to necessarily.
Oh, I think they did. I mean,
William Randolph
Crooked-
Hearst
Crooked-
and Billy Sunday, you think they got those?
Crooked, I think they understood crooked newspaper, crooked clergy,
yes,
crooked,
yes, crooked everybody.
corporations. I
Right.
think they understand that very
Right.
well. I have a half a minute to talk about Mrs. Murray's Menagerie. This, and I've already, you can catch my first impressions, which will actually be longer. It's basically a focus group on a children's show that, to me, came off like a focus group about a children's show, which is to be extremely boring. Yes, there's a couple of things where they get in, is this puppet black, is this puppet white, and it's a racially mixed...
Did your fellow audience members feel quite as
No,
bored
they
as
loved
you
it.
did?
They really seem to be having a very positive reaction to it.
This is
I did
Ars
not.
Nova, and we don't
I will
get
give
there
it
often
2
enough.
playbills, and that's generous, I think, and that is our show for this evening. When you go to the theater, look for Leslie and me, us too.
On the aisle.